every time I revisit the Harry Potter series, one uncomfortable question keeps bothering me. How did a society with literal magic fall into a single extremist so easily? In this video essay, and actually they did it twice if you count Grindelwald too. In this video essay, I'll explain my theory of why the wizarding world was always doomed to collapse. We're going to look past the dark arts and examine the real villains, the press, the laws, and the ministry itself, because the truth is, the system wasn't hijacked. It worked exactly as designed.
Was the wizarding world ever built to survive? Because the castle is on fire. Not the candles floating in the great hall kind. The real kind. Stone sweating heat, tapestries catching, corridors shaking under curses that should never be traded inside a school. In the great hall, bodies lie where they fell. Teachers and students, parents and children. The safest place in Britain's hidden nation becomes a battlefield the outside world will never fully understand. This is the end of the wizarding world as it imagined itself. And the question that haunts me isn't, how did Voldemort do this? He didn't do it alone. Not really. The real question, the uncomfortable one, is whether the world was survivable. Because when you watch the Battle of Hogwarts unfold, it doesn't feel like a sudden catastrophe. It feels like a bill coming due. Like a dam breaking after centuries of pressure. Pressure everyone learned to ignore, because magic makes denial so easy. So we're starting at the end, and rewinding. Back through the wars, the lies, the laws, the old wounds. Not speculation, analysis. Everything here is grounded in canon events, and when I connect dots, I'll tell you I'm connecting them. Here's how we got there. Long before Harry Potter's scar became a symbol, the collapse began as an argument between friends. Hogwarts was founded in the 10th century by 4 legendary witches and wizards: Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. They built more than a school. They built the beating heart of wizarding Britain. And then Slytherin flinched. He distrusted Muggle-born students. He wanted Hogwarts to be pure blood only. The other founders disagreed, especially Gryffindor. Their friendship shattered. The school survived. But the rot stayed. Because Slytherin didn't just leave. He built the Chamber of Secrets beneath the castle, without the other founders' knowledge. He hid a basilisk there and left behind a mechanism, Parseltongue, bloodline, myth, so that one day his true heir could purge the school of Muggle-borns. That isn't a historical oddity. That's a blueprint, secret power, hidden beneath a respected institution, waiting for the right extremist to inherit it. Centuries pass. The wizarding world grows, but it grows inward. In 1692, the International Statute of Secrecy becomes the golden rule. Hide from Muggles. Dress like them when you must. Don't expose magic. Repair breaches, sometimes by modifying memories. Canon treats secrecy as survival, and it is. Persecution happened. Fear was earned. But here's my analysis. Secrecy didn't only protect wizards, it trained them. A society that lives by hiding starts confusing private with untouchable. It learns to treat outside scrutiny as persecution by default. And trauma hardens into ideology. We can see that shift in the rise of pure blood doctrine after secrecy. Marriages with Muggles drop. Some families preach that intermarriage is contamination. Others resent hiding so deeply they'd rather declare war than stay secret. Then comes bureaucracy, the Ministry of Magic. After secrecy, wizarding Britain needs a complex governing structure to regulate and police its life in the shadows. Ministers are elected, but the culture's logic stays simple. We must manage ourselves, because if we don't, the Muggles might interfere. Fear of the outside becomes permission for power on the inside. And that power isn't balanced. The Wizengamot functions as both High Court and Parliament, legal tribunal and legislature, in the same institution. Trials can come down to a vote. There don't even seem to be lawyers in the Muggle sense, just a panel and a majority. That might be tolerable in a culture obsessed with truth. Wizarding culture isn't, because magic makes accountability slippery. Polyjuice potion can steal a face. The Imperius curse can steal a will. Memory charms can erase evidence, erase witnesses, erase identity itself. These aren't fringe spells. In canon, they are part of how the wizarding world maintains secrecy. Ask yourself what that does to justice. If identity is fluid and memory is editable, proof becomes theater. Authority becomes the only stable fact. And whoever seizes authority becomes the law. Now add the prison. Azkaban isn't just a location, it's a worldview. After Secrecy, the Ministry decides scattered local prisons are security risks. A remote prison is preferred, but an anti-Muggle minister scraps those plans and insists on using Azkaban, already infested with Dementors. He claims that's an advantage. They can be harnessed as guards, saving time, trouble, and expense, cost-saving through soul-eating monsters. The Dementors become a normal tool of the state. The Kiss exists as a state-sanctioned annihilation of personhood. The Ministry doesn't merely punish, it terrifies. And that terror is unevenly distributed. House elves are magically bound to serve, and are typically unpaid. Their obedience is enforced so deeply that resistance causes pain. Freedom, in the most literal sense, is a gift from a master. Goblins are treated with casual disdain, and goblin rebellions thread through wizarding history. Even the Ministry's iconography once celebrated a hierarchy, where non-human beings gaze adoringly upward at witches and wizards. So when Voldemort promises purity and order, he isn't inventing a hierarchy. He is weaponizing a hierarchy the world already normalized. Now, the 20th century arrives, and the old timer starts beeping louder. Tom Riddle grows up in a society where Salazar Slytherin's legacy still carries mythic weight, where pure blood is pedigree, where power is admired, and where institutions are brittle but frightening. At Hogwarts, Riddle opens the Chamber of Secrets. A basilisk kills Myrtle Warren, and the school responds the way this world often responds. It finds a convenient target. Hagrid is expelled. The true monster is rewarded. That is a miniature collapse, the institution choosing the comforting lie over the destabilizing truth. Years later, that pattern scales into war. When Voldemort rises the first time, terror spreads. The Ministry answers with force. Bartemius Crouch Sr. becomes head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement and, during the First War, takes on the role of judge condemning and convicting the accused. He becomes known as ruthless, and fear applauds cruelty. Sirius Black is imprisoned without a trial. 12 years in a soul-sucking prison because the system chooses speed and certainty over due process. Here's the analysis. The wizarding world didn't begin collapsing when Voldemort appeared. It began collapsing when it decided that losing its principles was an acceptable price for feeling safe. Because once you accept that, you teach everyone the same lesson. Power is what matters, not truth. Then Voldemort vanishes. Harry survives. The streets celebrate. There's an amnesty for minor breaches because everyone's partying. It looks like resilience. But the Death Eaters don't evaporate. Some claim they were under the Imperius curse. Some lean on high-placed connections. Some slide back into respectability. Wealthy families still influence elections and prefer to be the power behind the throne. This isn't a rebuilt world. It's a paused one, which brings us to Harry's school years and the series' slow revelation. The adults are not in control. And it's not just the monsters under the bed. It's the bed frame. Look at the Wizarding World's information system. In Britain, the Daily Prophet is treated like the only truly large newspaper, which means public reality has a single point of failure. When it's merely sensationalist, people gossip. When it's leaned on by the ministry, the country becomes programmable. That's why, later, Potterwatch matters. It isn't just pirate radio. It's the birth of an alternative nervous system in a society that never built one. And look at education. Defense against the dark arts is required because dark magic is real. But the teaching post is infamous for disaster after disaster. Professors don't last. Year after year, Hogwarts sends students toward adulthood with inconsistent training, and the subject becomes hostage to whoever happens to hold the chair. In a healthy society, that chaos would trigger reform. In Wizarding Britain, it becomes shrugged-off tradition. That shrug is another rehearsal for collapse. A teacher can host a Dark Lord for a year. A cursed diary can possess a child. The chamber can reopen. Students can be attacked. And somehow, the people tasked with protecting children treat catastrophe like background noise. By the time Voldemort returns in Harry's 4th year, the system is already habituated to disaster. And then, the keystone, Year 5. Cornelius Fudge refuses to accept Voldemort's return. He leans on the Daily Prophet, which functions as the only truly large newspaper in Wizarding Britain. One narrative, one megaphone. Harry is smeared. Dumbledore is painted as a threat. Truth becomes treason by headline. And to enforce that narrative, the Ministry does something that should have terrified everyone. It occupies Hogwarts. Dolores Umbridge arrives with Ministry authority, denies reality, punishes students, and builds a regime inside the school. She doesn't need Voldemort to do this. She uses existing power, existing prejudice, existing mechanisms. This is where collapse becomes inevitable, because now the Ministry has proven it can become a dictator in peacetime. By the end of Year 5, an open battle in the Department of Mysteries forces Fudge to admit the truth. But admissions don't heal. They expose. Rufus Scrimgeour takes office and tries to project control. Strongman optics in a world that's already slipping. Then, Dumbledore dies. Here's another piece of analysis. Wizarding Britain wasn't a system. It was a stack of people, Dumbledore near the top, holding things together through competence and moral gravity. When he falls, the stack topples. Scrimgeour is killed. Voldemort takes the Ministry. Pius Thicknesser becomes minister in name, but he's under the Imperius curse for his entire term, unconscious of what he's doing. Read that again. The government becomes a puppet. If your leader can be replaced by a magically controlled body, your state isn't a state. It's a costume. And now the collapse reaches full expression. Bureaucracy laundering evil into policy. The Muggle-born Registration Commission is established. Umbridge heads it. It functions like a kangaroo court, imprisoning Muggle-born witches and wizards on the claim that they stole magic. Some are sent to Azkaban and do not survive. This isn't Voldemort inventing a new world. This is the old world. Secrecy, hierarchy, terror, stripped of its mask. Resistance goes underground. Potterwatch broadcasts coded news because official channels are corrupted. People hide, run, vanish. Hogwarts becomes not a school, but a fortress. The next generation is forced into compliance or rebellion. And then we arrive again at the end. The Battle of Hogwarts. The moment when Wizarding Britain, having failed to build durable institutions, is forced to stake its survival on students with wands and whoever still has the courage to stand. In the Great Hall, Voldemort dies by his own rebounding spell. In canon, his undoing is tied to his choices: arrogance, blindness, myth-making. But the war that brought him there was made possible by a society rehearsing small collapses for centuries. So why was the wizarding world always headed for collapse? Because its greatest strengths were also fatal weaknesses. Magic made power too easy, and truth too malleable. Secrecy made the community safer, but also more paranoid and more insulated. Centralization made governance efficient, but fragile. One ministry to corrupt, one court to weaponize, one newspaper to control, one prison to terrorize. And hierarchy, blood, species, class, made cruelty feel normal long before Voldemort demanded it. Harry's story ends with hope. Kingsley Shacklebolt becomes minister. Dementors are removed from Azkaban. Death Eaters are hunted down. Children grow up. But the mythic lesson isn't that evil lost. It's that survival is not the same as safety. The wizarding world didn't almost collapse because a Dark Lord returned. It almost collapsed because it had been practicing collapse all along. Every time it chose comfort over truth, force over justice, secrecy over accountability, and tradition over the living people crushed beneath it. And the next time the world gets scared, it will face the same question again. Will it change? Or will it simply hide and wait for the timer to reach 0?